talk about ball tracer stuff. Okay. We're gonna talk about basics first, and then we'll go like into a bit more advanced. Okay. So we talked about yesterday that we're always playing for our Zenyatta. Okay. We're always playing for our Zenyatta. Right. We're playing to set up our Zen. Okay. And then our ball tracer is looking to like hold an enclosed lane. 1 second. Done. I think he's done. Okay. Our ball tracer is looking to hold like and play in an enclosed lane, looking to like control space, looking to either match their ball tracer or go on their back line. Right. So the first thing I'm gonna talk about is like just helping you guys understand the different matchups first. Okay. So there's like Mercy Zen and there's Brig Zen. Okay. That's backline. So this backline is obviously way more spammy. Okay. And this backline can split more. So what I mean by that is you have Sigma, Ash, Mercy, Zen, right? And you have this, and you guys normally stick together. But then if you want to push space or take different angles, your Ash Mercy can play together, and then your Sigma Zen can play together. So like your Sigma Zen could maybe push like here, and your Ash Mercy could maybe push over here, and you have these angles, and then maybe your ball's like over there. So you have like 3 angles now. So 1 second. Kenneth. Shush. You're unmuted. So again, we're gonna play this when we have long maps. Why? Because that's inherently where Brig doesn't get as much value, right? So on like maps like Route 66 on defense, right? On defense, it's always going to be easier because when you're taking space, it's nice to have Brig because Brig will help you defend against ball, right? So in general, long maps, like this is a long map, that's why we run Mercy. Another example of another Koth map that might be long, that you could maybe consider it, is like Ilios Ruins. That's like a really long map too. Okay, so that's backlines, right? And then if you think about payload maps, like I said, it just depends on the length as well. When we're taking space, right, when we're on attack, you can still run Mercy, right, if you want, but the biggest problem you're going to have is you just need to make sure you carry your Zen. Because whenever you run this composition, right, the biggest thing you still need to do is you still need to position correctly, but you have no Brig, hence it's very easy for an enemy ball tracer to go kill your backline. So when you're running this, it's a little bit more important that your ball tracer is making sure that they're matching their ball tracer. Because when you play this comp, you're putting a lot more value into your backline, right, and like spamming a lot more. And if their ball tracer is able to go on your backline, it becomes a bit more difficult. Okay. DPS. Okay. In general, you almost always have a tracer. Why do you always have a tracer? Because tracer almost always plays with ball, right? Very rarely will you see like Ash Echo, or like not a non-flanker with ball. If their enemy team doesn't have a flanker with ball, then all that means is your ball tracer is free, and your ball tracer should just go and kill their backline for free. Like you don't even have to match their ball because they only have one threat, and your Brig, if you have a Brig, will be able to deal with it. If you don't have a Brig, then your tracer can just go on their ball, and your ball can just go kill their backline. Okay, so normally you almost always have a tracer, right, for the mobility and like the execution. This DPS is what normally changes a lot, right? You normally have the Ash, the Echo, and in some places, honestly, even Sombra. Watch some Korean like play, they run it. Some like NA teams run it too, and Sombra's honestly really strong on Koth. So if we want to run Sombra, we can. And when you're playing Echo, inherently you're gonna be playing slower, sort of, right? Because it's like more of a spammy hero, right? And then if you're playing Ash, right? Oh, I forgot one more. When you're playing Ash, right, like that's just sort of the norm, right? That you're just playing your normal backline, you're looking to spam, you're doing your normal thing. But the biggest thing again is just make sure you've got really good LOS. When you're playing Sombra, I'm not gonna go too much into that unless we want to run that. But when you have a Sombra, right, it allows you to look to basically make their ball panic because their ball essentially can't like do much. Like their ball is scared because the Sombra could be anywhere, and you can hack the ball, and you can also look to coordinate dives. So when you play Sombra, it allows you to honestly like allows you to do a lot of things. You can play with the team and counter the enemy ball tracer. You can play a little bit more aggressive in a more aggressive roaming pattern and look to like hack someone, and your team can like go really aggressive on the hack. McCree is where you're playing more to like for your backline. You're playing inherently more brawly, right? And you're playing to like it'll allow you to peel more, right? So if you've got like you normally play McCree in like enclosed maps, right? And you'd run like McCree if you know the enemy ball tracers like giving you guys a lot of hell. So McCree Brig Zen, it would be the backline, right? You don't never really run McCree with Mercy Zen because that's just straight up weird because McCree like wants a Brig near it. But if you run this, then inherently you're not worried about their ball tracer anymore, Why? Because you have McCree Brig Zen. Their ball tracer should be very scared. Hence, your ball tracer, right? If you're running McCree Brig Zen, can be really aggressive and just go on their backline. Okay. So the big things to take from this, right, is the understanding of McCree, your Brawly, right? You want to play a bit faster. Your ball tracer, you don't need to like match their ball tracer as much. You can just look to go for plays. When you're playing Echo, right? It's again you're playing slower. Your ball tracer can look to match or do whatever you want to do, right? When you're playing Ashe, it's sort of the same thing. When you're playing Mercy Zen, right? It's really important you match. Okay. Now, the biggest thing I'll add now is we look at like matchups, right? So like let's say we're playing Mercy Zen and they're playing Mercy Zen, right? Then it's a bit more open in the air because you could look to go on their backline, right? And they could look to go on your backline and you could like go for that trade. Or you could say like, you know what, it's fine. You know, I'm just gonna match their ball tracer and hope my backline gets more value than theirs. Right. So you sort of have to like weigh options a bit if you're both on Mercy Zen. Okay. In general, but the biggest thing I want you to always think about before you like decide, right, if you're gonna match or like, you know, if you want to go on the back line, is I want you just to understand what lanes you're playing, right? And it's like over here, like you want to play this in closed lane, and you want to just deal with them here. And then after that, you sort of want to push forward, right? One of the biggest decisions you can always do when you're playing ball is you can always match for a bit and then say, oh, the enemy team is rotating in open space. Oh, okay. You know what? Forget this matchup and just grapple and just kill them. You can always make that decision and just do that if you want, and that's really free. The biggest thing you're gonna need to remember is does your tracer have CDs when you do that? Because if your tracer doesn't have CDs, then it's you can't do that. Okay, so that's ball tracer, right? Backline. You guys already talked to you yesterday about like the whole understanding of corners, right? Distance from angles, distance from angles. Talked about LOS understanding, um, and then rotations, right? Like being able to rotate. So I'm gonna go a bit more into detail into all of this. Okay. So the biggest thing you need to understand is when to take space, right? So if our ball tracer and their ball tracer are matching, right? And what you need to understand is you have a few options here. When this is matching, you can either look to rotate. You can look to rotate more aggressively, like and like take another aggro angle because they're being matched right now, right? You can maybe look to rotate more and like go more aggressive and like get better angles and keep spamming them really hard, right? Or you could look to push up to another corner, right? Another safe area. In this situation, you don't really have another safe area, you just have better rotations. Okay. The reason why I don't want you just inting in on them is for the exact reason that I said before, where an enemy ball tracer can say, oh, the enemy team is rotating. Okay, cool. They're rotating. Let's just, go in on them. So I want you to be very careful backline. Okay, this is like really important. If our ball tracer or if their ball tracer is being matched, or we like get like let's say their ball tracer like their ball really low. Okay, we the way I want us to look at this for now, okay, is I don't want us to like push really hard. I don't want us to just push. I don't want us to do this because what I'm always scared of, and I'll explain why in a second. I don't want us to really push really hard. I want us to understand the distance. I want us to understand the distance. So why I'm saying understand the distance is the distance between backlines. So for example, let's say for example, their backline's like over here, okay, and our backline's over here. Ball tracer are being matched, right? And for some reason, Kenneth's like, I want to run them down. So he decides to rotate all the way over here and close distance. We have no speed. Because we have no speed, if we make this rotation to try and push into them, right? The chance of they saying, oh, cool, we can push them and kill like they're rotating and just say like, okay, cool, their ball tracer will just grapple and slam us in rotation and we just die, right? Or we get pressure and we probably lose because it's very hard for our break to bash in this situation because we're moving, right? Is really high. But let's say the enemy team for some reason was like literally like right over here. The enemy team is right over here, right? Then this distance is really small. Hence, like we can close this distance really fast, and it's probably okay if like they're matched, right? Or even the ball's like 1 HP. Like let's say you force the ball out and the ball goes over here to get this mega is really low. Then since it's such a small distance, we can close this distance and we can inherently brawl. Okay, does this make sense? So based off these two situations, right, we need to understand the distance, like variable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. In general, though, normally instead of like if you can't push like this, like let's say if distance is like distance equals like long, right? Then what we look to do, if we look to go for like a really like solid like a rotation, like an aggro rotation. Aggro angle is a better way of looking at it. Okay, if distance is equals like short, then we can just push into them, right? And like if you just imagine maps, right? Like let's say you're looking at a map like Oasis Gardens, right? Like and like you're both playing like really like both playing your hookahs and like you guys like and both teams sort of touch point. You're really close to each other, right? And their ball's 1 HP, it goes out, and maybe you're running Kree there. You're running Kree plus they're close. Like you want to push that. You want to start brawling, right? So you just need to understand like based off like also the question is do you have a Kree? Like okay we have a Kree. We definitely want to brawl even more. So like the other question, the variable you need to add here as well is like what DPS do you have? So if you Kree, obviously even if it's like a little bit longer than normal, you probably still want to close the distance.
Would we ever want to push distance?
Not really, unless like I'll get there in 1 second. But right now, no. So this is a ball tracer match. Ball tracer's low. The other thing we need to understand is if ball or tracer is dead. If they're dead, what do you think we want to do? If their ball or tracer is dead,
Like
do you
their
think,
ball or tracer?
Yep. Do you think we want to push on backline?
Probably take aggressive angles.
I mean, yeah, I think so.
I think when their baller tracer is dead, I think we can push. So the biggest thing I'll say is if their tracer's dead, right? I'm still a little worried about their ball. It scares me a bit, but I still think we can push a little bit. Just depends on like where we're pushing and like how long the distance is. But if their ball is dead and it's just tracer, right? Then 100% we should push because like that's really free. Like there's no reason to push. A tracer's not going to do anything because we have a brig. Does that make sense? The only reason why we don't push a lot is because like of like their flankers, right? So we just need to keep that in mind. And the last thing I'll also say, in terms of understanding when to push is let's try and like put it kind of like trying to organize it. I haven't really like done a clean VOD review on this, so it's not super organized. Is if like they have like a full spam comp or a spam ball comp, and I'll talk about that what I mean by that in a second. Spam. And they're like trying to like web us. So like what I mean by spam comp is like let's say they have like a Mercy, Zen, Ash, and then like an Echo. Like again, like I said, not many people run this, but if they have this, right, like we want to be very careful like running into them. Why? Because what'll happen is maybe their Ash will have an angle, their Echo might have an angle, their Zen has an angle. We just run in and we just die. Right? Like if they have something like this, what we want to look to do is let our ball tracer go in first, let them take the like sort of like attention, then go forward. Okay, and that's in general. Normally, when we take forward, normally that's what we do. But right now, this is like the biggest thing to understand is these things. Okay, for our backline.